The sun bathed the lush greenery of the Dawson home as Ella sat on the front porch, sipping her morning coffee. She glanced at her phone, scrolling through Instagram. Her page was filled with curated snapshots of her perfect life, a family picnic in a park, a dinner date with Richard, and pictures of Cindy smiling in her school uniform. Today, Ella decided it was time for another post to remind everyone how blessed she was. She picked up her phone and called out, "Richard, Cindy, let's take a quick picture. Everyone come outside." Richard appeared from the study, looking slightly distracted. "A photo? Now, I'm gonna call Ella. Just a minute. It'll be quick," Ella said with a sweet but firm smile. Cindy strolled in, already rolling her eyes. "Mom, do we really have to do this? I have an assignment to finish." "Just one picture," Ella insisted, waving them outside. The three stood in the front yard as Ella held the phone at arm's length. After a few tries, she captured the perfect family shot and posted it with the caption, "Family is everything. Blessed beyond measure. 2 Arts hashtag, grateful hashtag, family goals hashtag, love wins." Later that day, Ella sat on the couch, staring at the photo. The likes and comments rolled in. "Beautiful family, Ella. You're so lucky. Such a happy family. Goals." But Ella wasn't smiling. Her gaze shifted to Cindy and Richard in the photo. She zoomed in, focusing on their expressions. Richard's hand rested casually on Cindy's shoulder, and they were both smiling warmly. Ella frowned. Her thoughts were interrupted by Richard calling out from the study again. "I'll be working late tonight, Ella. Don't wait up for dinner." She walked to the study door. "Another late night? You've been working late a lot recently." Richard sighed, not looking up from his laptop. "Deadlines, Ella. You know how it is." Ella folded her arms. "You're sure there's no other reason?" Richard finally looked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "I'll save you a plate." In her room, Cindy scrolled through her phone, texting her best friend, Bella. Her mother's voice suddenly rang out. "Cindy, come downstairs for dinner." "Coming," Cindy yelled back, typing one last message before heading downstairs. At the table, Ella was quiet, her eyes flicking between Cindy and Richard. The two were chatting about school and work. "Mom, can you pass the salt?" Cindy asked. Ella slid the salt shaker across the table, her smile tight. "So, Cindy, how was school today?" "Good," Cindy replied. "We're working on this big project for design class." "Sounds exciting," Richard chimed in. "Do you need any help with it?" Cindy grinned. "Actually, yeah. Maybe you could take a look at my sketches later." "Of course," Richard replied warmly. Ella's hand tightened around her fork. "Why don't you ask me for help, Cindy? I'm sure I could be useful too." Cindy glanced at her mom, surprised by her tone. "Sure, Mom. I'll show you both." Ella's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'd like that." The next morning, Cindy met up with her friend Laura at a cafe near her school. Laura was Ella's childhood friend, though she and Cindy had grown close in recent months. "I don't know what to do with her," Cindy sighed, stirring her coffee. "She's so controlling. Everything I do is a problem." "Your mom's always been like that," Laura said with a smirk. "Trust me, I've known her forever. She's always watching me. And now she's watching me and Richard," Cindy added, lowering her voice. Laura raised an eyebrow. "Richard? Why? I don't know. She's just weird about it," Cindy said, shaking her head. "Maybe she's just jealous," Laura said with a chuckle. Cindy laughed nervously. "Jealous? Of me? That's crazy." "Maybe not as crazy as you think," Laura said, leaning back in her chair. "She's always been possessive about her relationships." Cindy frowned, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her mom. "Where are you? Are you skipping class?" "She's texting me now," Cindy muttered, holding up her phone. Laura laughed. "Good luck with that. You'll need it." That evening, Ella sat in the living room scrolling through Cindy's Instagram. She paused on a picture of Cindy and Richard at her last birthday party. They were standing next to each other, both smiling. The caption read, "Best stepdad ever. Red heart, hashtag family love." Ella frowned and switched to Richard's profile. He didn't post often, but his last upload was from 2 months ago, a picture of Cindy holding a certificate from school. "So proud of Cindy for her hard work," the caption read. Ella's stomach churned. "Why doesn't he post about me like that?" she muttered. The next day, Ella noticed Cindy's phone lying on the kitchen counter. Cindy was in the shower, and Richard was upstairs. Ella hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was watching, then picked up the phone. She opened Cindy's messages and began scrolling. Most were harmless conversations with friends, but one thread caught her attention. It was a chat with Richard. "Richard, great work on your sketches. You've got real talent." "Cindy, thanks. I wouldn't have done it without your advice." Ella stared at the messages, her heart pounding. Though the exchange was innocent, her mind raced. "What else are they hiding from me?" she whispered. Later that night, Ella sat alone in the dark, replaying moments in her mind. Cindy laughing at Richard's jokes, Richard working late, Cindy texting at the dinner table. The perfect family portrait she'd posted felt like a lie. In the guest room, Richard was reviewing work files when Cindy knocked on the door. "Hey, Richard, can I ask you something?" "Sure, come in," he said, putting his laptop aside. Cindy stepped in, holding her sketch pad. "Can you take a look at this design? I'm trying to figure out if the color scheme works." Richard smiled. "Of course." Unbeknownst to them, Ella was standing in the hallway, listening. Ella's paranoia grew stronger with each passing day. The tension in the house was palpable, though Cindy and Richard remained oblivious to Ella's growing suspicions. Ella often found herself alone in the kitchen, gripping a glass of wine, staring at the family portrait on the wall. Her mind was consumed by one thought: something isn't right. But what was she going to do about it? The seeds of doubt had already taken root, and Ella's jealousy was about to lead her down a dark, irreversible path. It was a sunny Sunday morning, and Ella was sitting at a cafe in Victoria Island, waiting for Laura to arrive. She had dressed up for the occasion, wearing a fitted green dress and her favorite pair of heels. Her makeup was perfect, and she'd styled her hair in loose waves, as always, trying to look her best. But inside, Ella was restless. The past week had been strange. Cindy and Richard were acting normal, or at least that's how it looked on the surface, but Ella couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Ella, darling." Lara's familiar voice rang out, pulling Ella from her thoughts. Lara strutted over, dressed in a bright yellow jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses. She air-kissed Ella on both cheeks before sitting down across from her. "It's been ages. How are you?" Lara asked with a wide smile. "I'm good," Ella replied, though her voice lacked enthusiasm. Lara noticed right away. You don't sound good. What's wrong? Trouble in paradise?" Ella hesitated, stirring her iced tea with a straw. "No, it's just, I don't know. I've been feeling strange lately." Lara raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" Ella sighed. "It's Richard and Cindy. I can't explain it, but sometimes I feel like they're too close, you know?" Lara leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with interest. "Too close? What do you mean?" Ella bit her lip, unsure if she should say more, but the words tumbled out anyway. "They laugh at each other's jokes, they text each other, and Richard spends so much time with her. I mean, he's her stepfather, not her best friend." Lara nodded slowly, as if processing the information. Then, with a careful tone, she asked, "Don't you think Cindy's getting a little too comfortable with him?" Ella blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "Well," Lara leaned in conspiratorially, "I've seen them together a few times, and honestly, it had crossed my mind that they seemed close. A little too close, if you know what I mean." Ella's heart skipped a beat. "You think so? I'm not saying anything's happening," Lara said quickly, feigning innocence. "But it wouldn't hurt to keep an eye on them, right? Better safe than sorry." Ella sat back, her mind racing. Was Lara right? Had she been ignoring the signs? "Don't stress too much about it," Lara added, sipping her mimosa. "Just be alert. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who betray us." Ella barely heard the rest of what Lara was saying. Her mind was already spiraling, replaying every moment she'd witnessed between Cindy and Richard. Every smile, every laugh, every text message. It all seemed suspicious now. That night, Ella couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. Richard was asleep beside her, breathing softly, completely unaware of the storm brewing in Ella's mind. Unable to take it any longer, Ella slipped out of bed and tiptoed to Cindy's room. The door was slightly ajar, and Ella peeked inside. Cindy was fast asleep, her phone lying on the nightstand. Ella hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding. Then, as quietly as she could, she crept into the room and picked up Cindy's phone. She quickly unlocked it. She'd seen Cindy's passcode once by accident and began scrolling through her messages. Most of the chats were with friends, Bella, Tund, and some classmates, but Ella's fingers froze when she saw Richard's name. She opened the chat and started reading. Richard, how's your project coming along? Cindy, almost done. Thanks for your advice. It really helped. Richard, you're doing great, Cindy. I'm proud of you. Cindy, thanks, Richard. You're the best. Ella's stomach churned. You're the best. What did that mean? Was Cindy flirting with him? Was Richard encouraging it? She kept scrolling, her mind jumping to the worst conclusions with each message she read. By the time she put the phone back on the nightstand, Ella was trembling with rage and suspicion. The next day, Ella watched Cindy and Richard like a hawk. Every interaction seemed suspicious to her now. When Cindy laughed at one of Richard's jokes, Ella clenched her jaw. When Richard complimented Cindy's dress, Ella's fists tightened. That evening, as Ella was preparing dinner, she overheard Cindy and Richard talking in the living room. She paused by the kitchen doorway, straining to hear. Remember that time we got stuck in traffic for 3 hours? Cindy was saying, laughing, and we ended up singing along to every song on the radio. Richard chuckled. Yeah, that was hilarious. I think we scared the other drivers with our terrible singing. They both burst out laughing, and Ella felt a surge of anger. Why are they laughing like that? What's so funny? She marched into the living room, forcing a smile. What's going on in here? Nothing, Mom, Cindy said, still smiling. We were just talking about that time we got stuck in traffic. Ella said, her eyes flicking between them. Well, dinner's ready. As Cindy and Richard headed to the dining table, Ella stood in the living room, her mind racing. They're hiding something. I know it. Later that night, Ella called Laura. I can't take it anymore, Ella whispered, pacing the kitchen. They're too close, Laura. I see it now. I told you, Laura said smugly. You're not imagining things, Ella. Trust your instincts. What should I do? Ella asked, her voice trembling. Keep watching them, Laura advised. If they're up to something, they'll slip up eventually. And when they do, you'll catch them. Ella hung up, her heart pounding. She knew Laura was right. She had to keep watching, keep digging, until she found the truth. But as the days went on, Ella's paranoia only grew stronger. Every smile, every laugh, every text message seemed like evidence of betrayal. She was convinced that Cindy and Richard were hiding something, and she was determined to uncover it, no matter what. Ella paced her room, her thoughts spiraling. It had been 2 weeks since Laura planted the idea in her head, and things had only gotten worse. Every day, she felt more suspicious, more convinced that something wasn't right. Cindy and Richard were still acting normal, but to Ella, it all felt like a show, a carefully crafted act to keep her in the dark. She felt like she was going crazy, and the worst part was she had no proof. That evening, Ella decided to clean the house, hoping it would distract her from erasing thoughts. She went from room to room, dusting, vacuuming, and organizing, until she reached Cindy's bedroom. The door was slightly open, and Ella stepped inside. The room was neat, as always, but Ella's eyes were immediately drawn to Cindy's dresser. A small jewelry box sat on top, slightly open, and something shiny caught Ella's attention. She walked over and lifted the lid, revealing a delicate gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. Ella's breath caught in her throat. Where did this come from? She whispered, picking up the necklace. She had never seen Cindy wear it before, and it definitely wasn't something Ella had bought for her. Her mind immediately jumped to the worst conclusion. Richard must have given it to her. Ella's hands trembled as she stared at the necklace. It was beautiful, too beautiful to be an innocent gift. She imagined Richard slipping it around Cindy's neck, whispering something in her ear, and the thought made her stomach turn. At that moment, Cindy walked into the room. She froze when she saw her mother holding the necklace. Mom, what are you doing in my room? Cindy asked, her voice wary. Ella turned to face her, her eyes blazing with anger. Where did you get this? She demanded, holding up the necklace. Cindy's eyes widened. It's from Alex. Alex, Ella repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. My boyfriend, Cindy said, her cheeks turning pink. He gave it to me last week. Ella narrowed her eyes. Do you think I'm stupid? Don't lie to me, Cindy. I'm not lying. Cindy protested. Ask Bella if you don't believe me. She was there when he gave it to me. But Ella wasn't listening. In her mind, the necklace was proof of everything she'd been suspecting. She shoved it back into the jewelry box and stormed out of the room, leaving Cindy standing there, confused and hurt. The next day, Ella called Laura. I found a necklace in Cindy's room, Ella said, her voice trembling. A gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. Laura said thoughtfully. And she said it was from her boyfriend? Yes, but I don't believe her, Ella replied. I think Richard gave it to her. Laura let out a low whistle. That's interesting. What do you mean? Ella asked, her heart racing. Well, Laura said, lowering her voice, I wasn't going to tell you this, but I saw Richard and Cindy at a cafe last week. They were sitting in a corner, talking, and they looked cozy. Ella felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. You saw them? Yes, Laura said. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but after what you just told me, I think you're right to be suspicious. Ella gripped the phone tightly, her mind racing. I can't believe this is happening. I know it's hard, Laura said, feigning sympathy, but you need to be strong. If they're betraying you, you deserve to know the truth. Ella nodded, even though Laura couldn't see her. You're right. I need to find out what's really going on. That evening, Ella couldn't hide her anger anymore. She sat at the dinner table, watching Cindy and Richard with narrowed eyes. Every smile, every laugh, every word felt like a betrayal. Mom, are you okay? Cindy asked, noticing her mother's tense expression. I'm fine, Ella said tightly. Why wouldn't I be? Cindy exchanged a worried glance with Richard, who raised an eyebrow. Ella, if something's bothering you, we can talk about it, he said gently. Oh, we'll talk about it, Ella said, her voice cold. But not now. The rest of the meal was eaten in uncomfortable silence. Later that night, Cindy knocked on her mother's bedroom door. Mom, can I come in? Ella sighed. Fine. Cindy stepped inside, looking nervous. I don't know what's going on, but if I did something wrong, I'm sorry. Ella stared at her daughter, her eyes hard. Do you think I don't see what's going on, Cindy? What are you talking about? Cindy asked, genuinely confused. I know about you and Richard, Ella said, her voice shaking with anger. I know everything. Cindy's jaw dropped. What? Mom, no. There's nothing going on between me and Richard. Don't lie to me, Ella shouted. I saw the way you look at him, the way you laugh at his jokes, the necklace. The necklace is from Alex. Cindy interrupted, tears welling up in her eyes. I already told you that. Stop lying, Ella screamed. I know the truth, Cindy. I know what you've been doing behind my back. Cindy burst into tears. Mom, please. You're wrong. There's nothing going on between me and Richard. But Ella was too far gone. In her mind, the betrayal was real, and there was no turning back. That night, Ella lay awake in bed, her mind racing. She couldn't stop thinking about Richard and Cindy, about the necklace, about what Laura had said. They're betraying me, she thought, and I won't let them get away with it. She didn't know what she was going to do yet, but one thing was certain. Things would never be the same again. It was a hot, humid afternoon, and the sun hung low in the sky as Ella drove along a dusty road on the outskirts of Lagos. Cindy sat in the passenger seat, staring out of the window with a distant expression. She had barely spoken since her mother had suggested a mother-daughter outing earlier that day. Where are we going, Mom? Cindy asked after several minutes of silence, her voice hesitant. It's a surprise, Ella replied with a forced smile, keeping her eyes on the road. I thought we could spend some quality time together. Cindy glanced at her mother, unsure. Ella's mood had been unpredictable lately. One minute she was calm, and the next, she was furious. Cindy had no idea what to expect anymore. The car continued down the narrow, winding road, passing clusters of trees and patches of dry grass. Finally, they arrived at a remote lake surrounded by thick vegetation. The water was dark and still, reflecting the golden hues of the late afternoon sun. Here we are, Ella said, parking the car. Cindy frowned. Why are we here? It's peaceful, isn't it? Ella said, stepping out of the car. Come on, let's take a walk. Reluctantly, Cindy followed her mother down to the edge of the lake. The air was thick with humidity, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Ella stopped by the water's edge and turned to face Cindy. For a moment, she said nothing, just stared at her daughter with an unreadable expression. Mom, what's going on? Cindy asked, her voice shaky. Ella took a deep breath, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. I want to talk to you about Richard. Cindy's heart sank. Not this again. Mom, we've already talked about this. There's nothing going on between me and Richard. Don't lie to me, Cindy. Ella snapped, her eyes blazing with fury. I know the truth. I know what you've been doing behind my back. There's no truth to know. Cindy cried, tears welling up in her eyes. Mom, please, you're making a mistake. Richard is like a father to me. I would never. Stop lying. Ella shouted, cutting her off. I saw the way you look at him, the way you laugh at his jokes, the necklace. You've been betraying me, Cindy, and I won't stand for it. Cindy shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her face. No, Mom, you're wrong. You're wrong. But Ella wasn't listening. In her mind, the betrayal was real, and Cindy's denials only made her angrier. You've ruined everything. Ella screamed, her voice trembling with rage. You ruined my marriage, my life, everything. Mom, please, Cindy begged, backing away toward the water. I didn't do anything. I swear. But Ella was too far gone. Consumed by rage and betrayal, she lunged at Cindy, grabbing her by the shoulders. Cindy screamed and tried to pull away, but Ella was stronger. Mom, stop! Cindy cried, struggling against her mother's grip. Please stop. But Ella didn't stop. She shoved Cindy backward, and Cindy stumbled, her feet slipping on the muddy ground. She fell into the lake with a splash, and for a moment, everything was silent except for the sound of water lapping against the shore. Ella stood at the edge of the lake, breathing heavily, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched as Cindy surfaced, coughing and gasping for air. Mom, help me, Cindy pleaded, her voice desperate. But Ella didn't move. She stepped into the water, her eyes cold and unfeeling, and grabbed Cindy by the shoulders once again. Cindy screamed and thrashed, but Ella held her down, forcing her head under the water. Mom, no. Cindy's voice was muffled by the water, but Ella didn't let go. Her hands were trembling, her mind racing, but she kept pushing Cindy down, kept holding her under, until the struggling stopped. And then there was silence. Ella let go and stumbled backward, breathing heavily. Cindy's lifeless body floated on the surface of the lake, her hair fanning out around her like a dark halo. For a moment, Ella just stood there, staring at her daughter's body, her mind numb. What had she done? How had it come to this? But there was no going back now. It was over. Ella dragged Cindy's body to the shore, her hands trembling. She looked around, her heart racing, but there was no one in sight. They were alone. She knew she had to get rid of the body, but her mind was spinning and she couldn't think clearly. She wiped her hands on her dress, leaving smudges of mud and water, and stumbled back to the car. As she sat behind the wheel, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, Ella tried to calm herself down. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop thinking about Cindy's lifeless eyes, about the way her body had gone limp in the water. What have I done? She thought, her chest tightening with panic. What have I done? But it was too late for regrets. There was no turning back now. Ella's hands trembled as she wiped down the steering wheel of her car for the third time that night. She had driven back from the lake in a daze, her thoughts scattered and her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Cindy's lifeless eyes kept flashing in her mind, haunting her every second. She couldn't escape the image, no matter how hard she tried. In the quiet of her home, Ella paced the living room, her mind racing. She had to think of a plan, something to explain Cindy's sudden disappearance. But Lagos was not a small town where people could vanish without anyone noticing. Cindy's friends, her boyfriend Alex, her teachers, someone would start asking questions. The next morning, Alex called Cindy's phone several times, but there was no answer. He frowned, feeling uneasy. Cindy always texted him back, even if she was busy. After a few hours of silence, he called Bella, Cindy's best friend. "Hey, Bella, have you heard from Cindy today?" Alex asked. "No," Bella replied, sounding concerned. "She hasn't replied to my texts either." "That's weird. I'm starting to worry," Alex said. "She didn't mention any plans last night, and now she's just gone." "Maybe her mom knows where she is," Bella suggested. "I'll call her." Ella was scrubbing the kitchen counter furiously when her phone rang. She jumped, her heart racing, and stared at the screen. It was Bella. "Hello," Ella said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Hi, Mrs. Ella," Bella said. "I was just wondering, have you seen Cindy today? She's not answering her phone, and Alex is worried." "Oh, Cindy," Ella said, forcing a laugh. "She left early this morning. She said she had something to do with her friends. I'm sure she's fine." "Okay. If you hear from her, can you let us know?" Bella asked, still sounding unsure. "Of course, dear," Ella said, her voice tight. "I'll let you know." She hung up and took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time before people started digging deeper. That evening, Richard came home from work, looking tired. Ella greeted him with a tense smile and a plate of food, hoping to distract him from her anxiety. "Have you seen Cindy?" he asked as he sat down at the table. Ella's hands froze for a split second before she forced a casual shrug. "She went out early this morning. She hasn't come back yet." Richard frowned. "That's not like her. She usually tells us where she's going." "She's probably with Alex," Ella said quickly, avoiding his gaze. But Richard wasn't convinced. He had noticed Ella's strange behavior lately, the way she avoided eye contact, the way she jumped whenever her phone rang. Something wasn't right. After dinner, Richard went to Cindy's room, hoping to find some clue about where she might be. As he looked around, his eyes landed on her jewelry box. He opened it and saw the gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. She didn't take it with her? He thought, confused. Cindy had been so excited when Alex gave her that necklace. She wore it almost every day. A sinking feeling settled in his chest as he closed the jewelry box and walked back to the living room. Ella was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. "Ella," he said, his voice serious. "Are you sure Cindy went out this morning?" "Yes," Ella said, her voice tight. "Because her necklace is still in her room," Richard said, watching her closely. Ella's eyes widened slightly, and she quickly looked away. Maybe she forgot to put on. Richard didn't say anything, but his suspicions deepened. The next day, Alex and Bella reported Cindy missing to the police. Officers were sent to the house to question Ella and Richard. "When was the last time you saw your daughter?" one of the officers asked Ella. "Yesterday afternoon," Ella said, her hands shaking. "She said she was going out, and I haven't seen her since." "Did she seem upset or unusual in any way?" the officer asked. "No," Ella lied. "She was fine." Richard watched Ella closely, his jaw tightening. He could tell she was hiding something, and it made his blood run cold. After the officers left, Richard turned to Ella. "Why aren't you telling me?" he demanded. "Nothing," Ella snapped. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Because I don't believe you," Richard said, his voice low and angry. "I think you know what happened to Cindy, and I want the truth." "There is no truth," Ella shouted, her eyes wild. "She went out, and I don't know where she is." Richard shook his head, his heart pounding. He couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in his gut any longer. 2 days later, Cindy's body was found near the lake by a group of teenagers who had gone there to swim. The news spread quickly, and within hours, the police were back at Ella and Richard's house. Ella was in the kitchen when she heard the sound of sirens outside. She froze, her heart racing, as officers stormed into the house. "Ella Johnson, you are under arrest for the murder of your daughter, Cindy Johnson," one of the officers said, grabbing her arms and placing her in handcuffs. "No, no," Ella screamed, thrashing against their grip. "You don't understand. I did it to save my family. She was trying to destroy us." Richard watched in horror as Ella was dragged out of the house, screaming and sobbing. His heart felt like it had been ripped out of his chest. The woman he had married, the woman he had trusted, had killed his daughter. As Ella was shoved into the back of the police car, reporters swarmed the scene, snapping photos and shouting questions. Within hours, the story went viral with headlines like, "Mother Murders Daughter Over Jealous Affair Rumors." Tragic case of obsession and betrayal in Lagos. Family drama turns deadly. The shocking truth behind Cindy Johnson's death. And as Ella sat in a cold, dark cell that night, she finally realized the full extent of what she had done. She had destroyed everything she had ever loved, and there was no turning back. The end.